What the fuck?
What the
Is that what
fuck?
Cosmo just said? What the fuck?
What did we just watch?
I don't know,
I,
but I need another beer.
I'm at home. I got cold ones in the fridge tonight. I'm gonna go grab one. Um, Welcome to Three Real White Guys podcast. Like, I, I'm Mike Heaton, Kellen Gracie, Jacob Dodds. We are doing a instant reaction on President Trump's speech. He just addressed the nation. What I think, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but this seems to be a plea to the American people to push their Congress people to vote for the SAVE Act. He's trying to
That
create momentum around it
yeah.
to do that. Is that anything more than that you
No.
see in this? And we're going to get into the fine grained details of what he said, which is just mind boggling. But like, what was the purpose of this?
So just a real quick high level summary. The whole thing was maybe 25, 27 minutes, something along those lines. You can actually find the whole speech at the website that he talked about in his speech. But the long and short of it is he opened up by talking how amazing he is for about 7 or 8 minutes.
Yep.
And then he railed on and on about grievances around the 2020 election that we've all already heard before. And then he actually he said they're dropping a bunch of documents on their website, all of which are evidence why we need SAVE right now, the SAVE Act right now. And yeah, essentially concludes with call your elected representatives and get them to vote for the SAVE Act. And that was
Right.
the entire purpose of this address of the nation. I'm kind of like, as we were sitting there talking about this and how we were gonna do this, I'm kind of like put back. I don't even know how to react to this because okay, if you go to the page, which we have pulled up right here, and we're not going to play his video because it was just nonsensical rambling for 25 minutes. But the long and short was he directs you to this website. And on this website, there are basically 4 different areas that he spent babbling about. The first one, vulnerabilities in electronic voting and ballot counting systems. He has a bunch of documents you can download for each of these 4 sections. If you download the 4 file packages, the first one has nothing to do with the U.S. at all. And the only evidence that there are potential issues is because in Venezuela, Maduro did some nasty stuff in his
Right.
election.
Callum, I don't want to go into the details quite yet. I want to stay on that macro level, then go in details here in a little
Sure,
bit. If we can keep going. I want to hear Jacob's thoughts real quick as well. But then I want to dive into those things because that absolutely is critical.
Well, I think
So, Jacob, what was your take on the macro level of this?
yeah. So first off, I was surprised that he talked for less than 30 minutes. I really fully expected this was going to be 2 hours of rambling.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree with Kellen's assessment that this was designed. He has been pissed that they haven't passed the SAVE Act, and this is a call to action for anybody who's concerned about this to contact their legislators to do this. But I also think that a huge part of this is to speak to the lower information voters out there to sort of plant the seeds as he does that if he knows that if the midterm elections swing to Democrats, he's done.
Yeah.
So he's planting the seeds that when that happens, if it happens, that the election has to be illegitimate, that the Democrats cheated, and we're going to see another January 6th type situation.
Right. So, I mean, let's start with the obvious stuff, and then we'll go into the more in-depth stuff that Kellen was referring to, because I think we do need to go there because I think it's very telling what's in those files. But let's start with the obvious one, and that is someone just posted this on our comment section, actually. They won 2024. Like, won. They took the
Right.
House,
Right.
Senate, and the presidency, while Biden had been in charge of everything and his famous deep state, all the shit that goes with it, according to Trump. And Republicans won after 4 years of control by the Democrats.
Well, there wasn't a blue wave in 2020 either, Mike. I mean, Trump
I know.
lost, but there wasn't a blue wave. So how did we
I
rig
lived in
the
Iowa.
how
So
did
did
how
you.
did we rig
Yeah,
the
it was
election so
horrible.
that Biden won, but no other Democrats did?
Mhm.
I mean,
Amazing how
if
that
we
works.
rigged this, what we'd have fucking free health, universal health care right now. Like we'd have high
Uh-huh.
speed rail systems getting built. Like we wouldn't be complaining about our schools falling apart. Like
Right.
we'd fix all these things if Democrats were rigging the elections.
It was like
I-
he was talking about himself, wasn't it? Like he knows a lot about rigging elections. It just felt like he was talking about himself,
Yeah,
especially when he went into Venezuela.
yeah, that's
Like he
what I
started
felt
talking about
like.
Venezuela. I'm like, how do you know this stuff?
I felt like he might be covering his tracks. You know, I mean, there were those conspiracy theories that Elon Musk tinkered with voting machines in 2024 in what was that, New York, Kellen, or Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah, it was New
I
York.
think it was New York.
So, I mean,
No,
it almost feels like to a certain degree he's covering his tracks.
Yeah.
blaming it on. That's all. It's all undeniable proof from his CIA, verified by the people he appointed, that this is all 100% true and undeniable.
Except for the fact that almost all of the documents that he put out there on the website are old.
Well,
mean,
yeah.
yeah.
If you go and you click these buttons and you download
Let's go
this
there,
stuff,
Colin.
yeah, and you spend the time. All it is, each of these sections downloads a zip file, and in that zip file are PDF files. And like this first one has a bunch in it, but all the documents talk about is Venezuela. So it has nothing to do with vulnerabilities in electronic voting and ballot counting systems here in the US, right? Then you get to the second one, and it's all about this thing in China, which is kind of scary if you read about it. But ultimately, what they're saying is they access voter registration data, and you can get voter registration data in a variety of different ways. You can purchase it. So it's not necessarily nefarious on its own, especially if you're doing some sort of academic modeling. People in political science have access to all sorts of voting data all the time. And so, like, the extent to which that was happening in China might not even be that big of a deal. But ultimately, if you download this file, you click this button and download this file, you'll get all these documents, and none of them actually say China did anything to alter votes, to manipulate election machines, to change the tally somehow. None of that is anywhere in those documents, right? So this section is just all nonsense. I haven't had too much time to go through this Michigan piece here yet. I think, Mike, you were working on this one, and the last two. But the last one, I did have a chance, because if you download the very last one, the fourth one, non-citizens on state voter rolls, you download it. The zip file has 2 PDFs in it, and nothing in there says anything about like verifying that 250,000 number. And anyway, yeah.
So
it's all
so I had
smoke
my
and mirrors.
suspicions. Yeah, it really is. It's Gish Gallup, as you pointed out earlier.
Yeah.
Alan. Like it's just throw a bunch of crap at the wall, scare everybody, overwhelm them with information. They're not going to be able to sift through it fast enough, and it gives Fox News and all their people a chance to put these great headlines out that people are going to see in order to get them to push to pass the SAVE Act.
Right.
So what I'd like to do real quick is just to go through a little more of this in detail on what he just pushed out, all the shit that he threw against the wall to confuse people, talk about what it actually is so we know. And then the last part of this episode, I really want to talk about why he's doing this. What is it about the SAVE Act that's so nefarious that we don't want to have it happen? Why is he pushing it hard? How is it going to impact our right to vote? And why would Republicans in control of the government right now want this to actually happen? So we'll get to that at the end. Stick with us, but let's go through the details first.
Well, before you get into that, though, Mike, I want to point one thing out. You mentioned Fox News. I don't think Fox News even carried this.
I don't think so either.
We had to go to RSBN to watch this, which I don't even know what the fuck RSBN is, other than it's a right wing propaganda podcast or something. I don't know. But anyway, go on.
So, but to your point, like he went after NBC and ABC, but a ton of networks didn't cover this. Let's start with that. It wasn't just those, right? See, but he was blaming the one or two. So it's all misdirection, right? So what I went and did, one of my roles as our little research group here is I downloaded these as fast as I could, all these documents, and I ran it through ChatGPT because you can do that in 2026. If
Right.
you know how to use it properly, you can ask it to be non-biased. You can ask it to look at things with a clear level head, just objectively, and figure out like things like how much of this was produced with AI, how much of it is likely real. Give me a scale, a percentage of likeliness. And so I just want to be clear, most of the documents in here are probably real according to AI. They look like legitimate documents. They're dated properly. They look like government documents. They're redacted in the way that governments redact shit. By the way, there's a lot of redacted shit in here, so like it doesn't really matter. But it's all from 2021, 2020. It's all the things he was referring to. And so then I asked Chat, okay, cool. Is there anything that does look like AI at all? And it's like, yeah, there's the summaries created by the CIA basically look like they're generated by AI.
Nice.
And I'm like, so like the stuff created like the last 3 days, and it actually says it. They have timestamps on it, created in
Since July 10th.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And so you
I
can
saw
actually
that.
that's in the metadata. You can see that shit in the background. There's
Yep.
also a lot of extra shit like in the background, like the header goes here, body goes here, kind of shit they didn't remove out of the metadata, which is interesting for government document as well. I mean, it's pretty clearly they don't know what they're doing at that level, but I went through and I put these in there, and I said, okay, this all seems like this legit documents.
Right.
Cool. And I said, okay, so do the summaries actually do a good job of summarying the documents in each of these folders? And it was uncategorically no. It's like says it does reference them properly. It does cite them correctly, but what it cites has no bearing on what kind of justification they're saying. And to your point, Kellen, you said it earlier, like it says, yes, there was likely voter fraud in Venezuela
Right.
through their election systems.
Right.
Those documents give no proof that it happened in the US.
Right.
Just that it happened in Venezuela.
Yeah.
And Trump actually said it. He says, our elections are worse than a third world country. And I'm like, our elections are why we're not a third world country.
He even specifically called out Venezuela, and he talked a little bit about it. But yeah, all those documents point to information gathered about elections under Maduro in Venezuela. None of them speak at all to vulnerabilities in ballot counting systems here in the United States.
Right.
So, like,
and that was says over and over again, it could happen. It doesn't say it did happen.
Right.
There's
exactly.
no proof that there was.
And just that interaction with that page, that's the very first thing you come across, right? Is that piece there, vulnerabilities in ballot counting systems. You download the file. That's the very first file. If you take the time to click the button and download the file and look at it, you open that up and you find nothing but Venezuela stuff. That's the very first thing you interact with. So as he's talking, as we're trying to figure out how this episode is going to go and how we're going to kind of cover this, that was the first thing I ran into. And I was like, they can't possibly think we're that stupid. But they really do. They really think that we are that stupid. And my takeaway from all of this is the Trump regime, and I think the GOP by and large, believes that the American electorate is stupid and that they can get away with so much because this is ridiculous. I just, it's so blatantly bullshit.
Well, and I think the interesting thing with that vulnerabilities on the vote counting, all of that information is from the Biden DOJ and the CIA. Like
Right.
it was in 2021, 2022.
Right, when all that stuff was gathered.
So basically all he's doing is creating a narrative that allows the rest of us to call into question the legitimacy of his election in 2024.
Right. I don't even.
So I went.
Yeah.
Well, I went through this some more, and I said to Chat, "Does any of this justify passing the SAVE Act? Because that was his ultimate call to action, right? He wants the SAVE Act passed, right?
Yeah, that's his whole thing here.
Yeah, all four of these things. I won't go. I'll give you the summary. I'm not going to give you every single sections, but I had to do that. I looked through all the documents, and here's what it says. It says, my evidence-based assessment is, and it gave me all the details behind this and actually pointed to all the citations. And we may post this on our website even, but you're going to see it in a lot of places over the next couple of days, I'm sure. Does this justify passing the SAVE Act? And it was uncategorically no. It does not.
Right.
It says the thing it does do is it justifies taking non-citizen registration seriously, which we do take seriously already. Like that's the thing. It's a felony to do it. If you're caught, which most people are because there is a discrepancy and there's audits on this whole thing, it's bad. It's a pretty bad sentence.
Right.
Does it justify audited citizenship verification? Yes, which we already have. Does it
Right.
justify better data sharing? Yes. That's actually the only thing it said it would actually improve data sharing. Now that's an opinion. What this is saying, share data with the federal government. It doesn't say share data between states. And I think it's really important for us to understand right off the bat. Trump said there's fraud in federal elections. And we all need to understand there is no such thing as a federal election.
Right.
There are state elections with federal candidates on them.
Even the presidential election, the elections, it's 50 different state elections being held for president.
Yes. He made claims today about something that doesn't exist. He wants it to be federal elections, and we're going to get to that here in a second. Does this prove widespread non-citizen voting? No. Uncategorically, no, and none of the documents do.
And let's
Does
not
this
forget
prove non-citizen voting affected an election outcome? No. Go ahead, Jacob.
Let's not forget. I realize I'm oversimplifying this, but let's not forget that the guy making these claims is the guy that was indicted for pressuring the Secretary of State for the state of Georgia to find him 12,000 votes.
11,780. Right.
Yep. Also, it says, does this establish the SAVE Act as the best or proportionate remedy? No. Does it justify passing the existing bill without further validation or safeguards? No. Like, it just keeps on going through all these things. Like, this does not relate. This does not create proof that the SAFE Act needs to be passed. So everything he presented tonight has nothing to do with the SAFE Act except for non-citizenship voting verification, which already exists.
Right. We already have a pathway for states to do that through the registration system. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, ultimately, my immediate reaction was, what did I just watch for 25 minutes? I can't believe I just wasted all that time. Just to listen to him babble. Half of it was stuff we've already heard before. And the rest was just this attempt to gaslight the American public into voting for this terrible legislation, into getting their elected representatives to vote for this terrible legislation. And I don't know, you said earlier, Mike, there's bipartisan opposition to this, is ultimately what I'm trying to say here, is not even all the Republicans want the SAVE Act, because they know, like, some of the requirements here are that in order to register to vote, you have to have a passport or a birth certificate. And something like 55% of Americans don't have a passport. And like tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, and it's hard to estimate, don't have a paper copy of their birth certificate, would have to go get one printed. Right. So all of a sudden you're already talking about costs and barriers before somebody can vote. And every step along the way that you add between someone registering to vote or somebody not being in a status of not voting, but a citizen and eligible, and then putting an obstacle or some sort of barrier in the way of them casting a ballot. Every time you add another step, it's another cost. It's another bunch of people who aren't going to do it because it's a form of voter suppression. It might not feel like it
because go through some of those things.
Yeah,
let's talk about what some of those are, because we can say it's voter suppression, but what are the voter suppression, right? So,
well, I mean, the big one
examples are, you have some? Yeah.
The big one is that in order to register, you have to have a passport or a birth certificate. For women in particular, there's some language in there around the name having to match. So if your current name is different from the one that's on your birth certificate and you're trying to use your birth certificate as your ID to register, you're going to have also a marriage document, right? So there's a whole bunch of people who don't have all of those things, or don't have the time to go track them down or dig them up, or go get a copy of them.
Well, there's a cost associated with getting copies.
There's a cost associated with doing anything in life, right? Like to go track down a document, to go dig something up out of the attic, to go do whatever. And so the more, and just in general, the more steps you add, the fewer voters you get. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like little things where it's just adding an extra step, adding an extra barrier, adding an
So
extra obstacle.
let's do some examples of that. What that's like as a human being doing that. Because my wife was a homeless service provider,
Hmm.
serving people who are homeless. One of the first things they always found is people couldn't access basic government services because they didn't have an ID. But to get
Right.
an ID, you had to have a birth certificate, the whole process, right? So she became somewhat of an expert in this. How do you get a birth certificate? How do you get any kind of basic record, right? And
Right.
what she found was stunning how hard it was. Number one, birth certificates are issued differently in different states.
Right.
There's
Exactly.
there's there's relationships with hospitals.
Right.
There's courthouses that store their records differently. It's
Right.
not just a 2026 thing where you call up someone, they look your record up online, and they send a PDF to you. It's that government building burnt down 35 years ago, and they haven't had those records for 35 years. That happened a lot, oddly
Yeah.
enough, especially for older citizens.
Right.
There's no birth record anywhere. You just assume because you had a social security card, you were good, right? There's the issue, like you said, with marriage certificates. We had to get a new birth certificate for a name change
Hmm.
for one of my kids not that long ago. It took 3 months
Yeah.
to get it done. That was for a standard name change. It wasn't like anything crazy. It took three
Right.
months to get it done, and we're still dealing with it because then you have to submit that to another agency. If you're in a Republican district and you know that Democrats are the ones, maybe because of poverty or women voters, whatever, you know that they're the ones that are more likely to not have their proper documentation because of
Yeah.
marriage, things like that, right? How easy would it be for a governor of, say, Iowa, Kim Reynolds, to just put a little pressure on that department at the state level, or maybe, I don't say a little pressure, I mean like underfund them, make sure the staff is non-staff fully to make that process take longer. Like
Mhm.
that's a very easy, very legal thing to do. And I guarantee you they'll do it because it gets them votes.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money behind those votes. And
And
then let's go ahead.
well, just to add to that, it's not even being cynical or hyperbolic or anything like that. That's an easy way for a bureaucrat to gum up the works, right? Because for a
Yeah.
lot of political operatives and any politician who's either running or in office or running to re-election or whatever is a political operative, any of them are just ultimately interested in winning, right? So whatever they can do to move
Right.
the needle a half a percentage point, a quarter of a percentage point, 10,000 votes here, 10,000 votes there, they will do it. So if it means making votes a little bit harder because the it's going to disproportionately affect your political opponents, demographically speaking, than your allies in terms of your voting coalition, then it's rational. Like it makes sense. It makes logical sense for a political operative to do that. And so that's why we see
Right.
it happening is because yes, it can impact an election.
And these are their jobs, by the way. Like these are elected officials running these departments, or they were appointed by an elected official from a certain party.
Yeah,
And if
Right.
they lose, they'll lose their job.
Right.
I'll just point out in Iowa the division that's responsible for issuing birth certificates is the Department of Vital Statistics, and it's
Okay.
located within the Department of Health and Human Services, and that's been a very popular target for Republican legislatures and Governor Reynolds since COVID.
Yeah.
Right. Then you
That's all I'll
had
say
things
about
like,
that.
that's perfect. Then you had things like people that just moved shortly before an election. They have to get
Right.
things changed. You had military families and Americans who are born abroad. By the way, birth certificates are issued in a very different way if you weren't born here, but you were a child of an American military person. Like that's a whole different process that can be gummed up very easily. And then I'm going to say the piece that we haven't mentioned nearly enough on this episode is the impact on rural folks.
Right.
Because our birth certificates aren't at our courthouse locally. It's hard to get a birth certificate if you live in Mount Pleasant, Iowa, you live in Salem, Iowa, or Wayland, Iowa, just south of Cedar Rapids.
Right.
Long ways away. It's just
Well,
south of
the
Cedar
other
Rapids.
and sorry, go ahead.
No, and that's it. Like it's harder even for rural voters too. So it's a little bit weird that Republicans are so gun ho about this because they don't think they realize how much it's going to disfranchise their own people.
Right.
So I do think we need to go into a little bit of why do they want this so bad.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know. And the other piece, and I'll just add on in terms of kind of the egregious thing the legislation does is that also prohibits universal mail-in voting. That's the other piece of this, which, by the way, is the method of choice for Donald Trump to vote. Emails in.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's also in there. Prohibit mail-in voting.
He didn't care. So let's go into why they want this so bad. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. I think we know.
Ultimately, what I was ranting about earlier, I think, is the number one reason. Is they're all political operatives. All of them are elected officials. They all want to win an election. They all know that elections are won and lost by and large, on the margins. So a percentage point here, a percentage point there. These are voter suppression tactics. And yeah, I think some of this isn't as thought through as many of them might have hoped. But like the passport thing in particular, I think people on the left are much more likely in the statistics to hold a passport than people on the right. And in addition to the married part of it too, there's also a gap there in terms of the proportion of liberal or left voting women having those appropriate documents versus those on the right. So I think some of them were sort of not thought through 100%, but ultimately, Mike, I think the number one answer to why do they want this is it helps elected officials shape the electorate, when in reality our electorate should be picking our elected officials, right? Not the other way around.
Yeah.
But that's
100%
I think
on the macro level. That is absolutely. So how does that happen? And to your point, it you can gum up the works is one way, and that's how it happens. But let's go into some of those other details that come with this SAVE Act. One of the ones that I find really interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Kellen, but 18 to 25-year-olds, how do they usually vote in mass? Like, which way do they lean?
There's been some wonkiness in that lately, but generally speaking,
answer it like it's a generality, not like you're a political scientist.
Yeah, they tend to vote for the Democratic Party,
right? In general, and by a long shot, it's not really that close. There has been some shifts recently, but in general, younger people vote more progressive, right? Well, one of the ways that you get new people signed up, especially on college campuses, is through these mass voter registration efforts, right?
Right.
That's critical for Democrats to get votes. They go out and they work with college students, newly turned 18 voters, and get them to register. Well, in the past, it was fill out this card, send it in, sign it with your signature on it. We'll have a verification process that goes into place to make sure you are who you are. But now that verification process happens on the front end.
Right.
Now you have to produce a birth certificate before you can even register to vote. You have to use a specific form before you can register to vote. Right. And that makes the cost of these mass voter registration efforts on college campuses extremely expensive. And I don't know how much of the population are 18 to 25-year-olds are voting, but I'm assuming it's a good chunk of the voting populace, enough to move an election.
Right. Yeah.
That's one of the big ones that's going to happen because of this. What else is there? There's a couple other big ones I know they're looking at.
Well, I think for me, the other, and I always think in terms of the macro, or typically think in terms of the macro. The other piece or element that stands out to me is this is just another example of like fear-based politicking. So it's the othering, it's the scariness. China has our voter rolls. This stuff going on in Venezuela. Oh my gosh. We don't want these non-citizens on our voter rolls, even though that doesn't necessarily mean they casted a ballot. So on and so forth. And all of it is grounded in fear. And this idea that there is this massive crisis that needs to be fixed immediately, when in reality, every election expert, even those who work under the Trump administration, will tell you that there is no reason to be concerned about the security or integrity of our electoral system in the United States. Like, we've had numerous Trump administration officials say that. Every recent election, that's something that the administrators come out and say. And there's been court cases fought, and none of them ever went anywhere. So it's just, it's so the other thing that stands out to me in terms of the reasoning is it's fear. It's another piece of, it's like remember the caravans? Remember the immigrant caravans that were coming to take all of our jobs?
Eating the cats and dogs?
What's that?
Eating the cats and dogs.
Well, it was even before that, right? It was like I think
Mhm.
2018, the 2018 midterms. Fox News was just nonstop covering these migrant caravans coming up from the south, and then as soon as the election was over, they stopped talking about them. Imagine that.
Well, that's because after Trump got in, there have been zero illegal border crossings. He said it himself tonight, Colin.
Did he say that?
Yeah,
Zero, which isn't
zero.
true.
No, of course not.
I
And by
think
the way,
too.
just a little side note on that, like that's not illegal border crossings that he's counting. He's talking about people with TPS that the government lets in on a temporary status. He put a zero to that. He gummed up the work so much that they couldn't get a judicial hearing, which is the law, I might add.
Right.
And he's
Right.
basically breaking the law and not allowing them to get a hearing. That's the zero he's talking about. There are still people walking across the border.
Yeah.
How
Right.
they can't count them if they can't catch them? You know what I mean? Like
Well,
that, they're
it's like
still coming
COVID.
across. Yeah, yeah,
It
that's
was his
right.
approach to COVID. If you don't test, then there's no cases, Mike.
No, yeah, exactly. So,
I'll,
Jacob, I'm curious from your end though on that. Like you talked about while we were off air going through this stuff. You think he might be setting up a case post-election, either 2026 or 2028, to undermine the elections? Is that right? By using this as a setup, especially if the SAVE Act doesn't pass?
well, yeah, I said this earlier. Is that
Yeah.
he's planting the seeds for another January 6th if the midterms don't go to his favor. He knows he's out. I mean, he knows that they'll impeach him and they'll convict him if he loses both the House and the Senate, and that's a very very
Right.
real possibility. But
That's
I
power
think the other
grab.
thing, going back to the SAVE, I wanted to mention one thing about the SAVE Act. This is nothing new. Okay, this is another chapter in a long story of voter disenfranchisement in this country.
Right.
And there's aspects of it. I mean, it started with the 3/5 of a man after slavery, and then we had poll taxes. This is an example. I mean, the SAVE Act in and of itself is a poll tax, requiring people to go get those documents and having to pay to do that is a poll tax. It
Yeah.
equates a poll tax.
100%.
So this isn't anything new. We've been doing this shit for years, trying to disenfranchise people that the whoever's in charge at the time doesn't think is going to vote for them, to try to keep them from voting. This is just nothing new.
Yeah.
100%. One other thought I had on the why they want to pass this, and this is the part that I struggle with the most, is this creates a very clear federal line into elections. It creates leverage for the federal government over voter registration rules, over elections, period, which is very advantageous for the group in power right now. So I'd ask Republicans, if we Democrats do win, do you want this? Do you want, the Democrat president and Democrat Congress and Democrat Senate Senate and the House to have this kind of power over your state elections? This is not the Republican Party of even 5 years ago, 10 years ago. This is a very federal heavy government in charge kind of thing. It's not state rights. It's not local rights. It's none of that. It's actually the exact opposite.
Well, and if anything,
This
I
is
hope
what's pushing.
if anything, I hope that the Democrats take advantage of this in saying that out of the 4 or 5 things that Trump threw out here tonight as evidence of why we need the SAVE Act passed.
Right?
Well, and I shouldn't say just the Democrats, because I know there are Republicans that are opposed to this. That's why it hasn't been passed yet. But I hope they take advantage of this to say, well, then we need to rewrite the whole fucking bill, because the only thing that the SAVE Act is addressing is the non-citizens being on the voter rolls. It's not addressing any of the other things that he claims are affecting the integrity of our elections. So, if anything, they should use it as an opportunity to delay and stonewall this, to say we need to go back and rewrite this if this is really the crisis that we say we have.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Wasn't that the truth? Like, number one, ChatGPT said the exact same thing when I put everything in there. It's like, this doesn't prove any of the stuff that he's talking about in the SAVE Act. It has some issues that need to be addressed, but the SAVE Act doesn't cover that. So, like, even on an objective computer staring at that data, says very clearly, like, you might have a problem here, needs to be addressed, but the SAVE Act is not your solution. And I think that gets proven out very clearly because all this stuff Trump is just releasing now, right? Like today. The SAVE Act was written months ago. They've been pushing this for months. So it was clearly not built on the data that Trump just showed.
Right.
So it's not, the SAVE Act is not the answer for what he just presented.
No.
There's no doubt about that because it literally didn't exist, hadn't
No, but
been made public.
That just circles back to the fact that this was just propaganda or aimed at scaring people.
Right.
Pure and simple.
100%. That's all it is. He thinks we're stupid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to do a quick shout out to one of the least stupid people I've ever met and one of our mentors on this show. I saw her watching. I don't know if she's still watching, but shout out to Mary Elger, truly a legend in Democrat politics in rural America, and definitely our mentor for this show in terms of a perspective on the history, especially of Democrat politics. She was a big Tom Vilsack supporter and driver of that election process. And just a huge shout out to a true legend in politics in rural America.
Nice. Very nicely done, Mike.
Yeah, I saw her pop on a couple times. I don't know if she's still on there, but she's awesome.
Yeah.
We love you, Mary.
One other thing I'd like to point out too before we go is to just encourage people to like, subscribe, do all those things to help us get our message out there. If you haven't seen it, here's the YouTube channel. You can always find our live feed on the YouTube channel. You can also find different segments, clips, shorts, as well as content that we don't have on Facebook and all the other channels like the podcast feed. So make sure you check out the YouTube channel as well.
So just to summarize everything as we head on out of this thing, you just all got Gish Galluped. We all did by the President of the United States. There's no way to put it, right? Like
Right.
it's all just a bunch of shit against the wall, trying to confuse us while trying to push a bill that is not proven to be needed by the information that he presented.
Right.
No other way to put it.
Gish Gallup.
Gish Gallup, baby.
Yep.
All right, y'all. Take care. Have a good week. Keep fighting a good fight. This has been an episode of Three Real White Guys. We'll see you next week.
Pennies, they can wipe their ass with the 20. Tell me what's it like to have plenty? I don't know. A billionaire's got a mega yacht, a single mom's got a second job. Whatever bullshit this is, God.